Hello, I'm John Lee, and if you've found us, you probably have been searching for uh, resources on the Silk Road. Um, what this channel and playlist is all about is an analysis of Peter Frankopan's book, The Silk Roads. And in addition to reading the book, we will have a monthly summary of the book by a history teacher, Ramsay Thomas, that will include graphics and above all, really detailed maps. And you'll be able to find that his first hour covering the first 3 chapters of the book is episode number 1, Ramsay Thomas analysis of Frankopan's book, The Silk Roads, the first of 8 parts, chapters 1 to 3. And that's in a playlist that is entitled The Silk Roads, a book by Peter Frankopan discussion group. And basically what the book and our project is to remedy what world historians have frequently done recently, is overemphasize the West at the expense of the Silk Road countries. I am introducing today the first of weekly discussion groups. So for each analysis that Ramsay Thomas gives, which lasts about 2 hours, for each of his monthly presentations, there will be 4 discussion groups, and this is the first that will be devoted to the first 3 chapters of the book, and also addressing questions that Ramsay Thomas raised in his monthly session. The topics that you will see today were just ones that appeared to us in the form of curiosity, topics, rabbit holes that we'd like to go down. And the interesting thing for this group is that the topics of the Silk Road intersect with a recent project that we had looking at the history of the Pashtuns, and that history took us obviously into parts of the Silk Road. So in fact, the very first map that you'll see in Ramsay's presentation, and the first map that will pop up when I'm done with my introduction, will show the city of Taxila in the Punjab plain, and the history of the Pashtuns overlaps with the Punjab. And the interesting thing on this ancient map of the Silk Road shows that there was a road from Taxila to Balkh. And Balkh was a very interesting city. As you will see, it's near today's Mazar Sharif on the northern border of Afghanistan. You'll also see that heading in the opposite direction from Taxila to the northeast is the road to Kashgar. And that has modern day impact, in that is the corridor, the economic corridor going from China through Pakistan, and the Chinese hope even further down to the Indian Ocean. We've covered it when we looked at Kashmir while we were doing the Pashtuns. The other topic that we were all interested in was Buddhism and the role of the Kushan Empire in promoting the spread of Buddhism as missionaries at first. Indian missionaries first headed east on a secure Silk Road by the security provided by the Kushan Empire. And then by the Tang Dynasty, the flow went the other way from east to west with a famous monk centered in Xi'an. The other thing of interest is by the Tang, they followed in the footsteps of the Han, but went even farther to the east, penetrating in search of horses to defend themselves against the nomadic warriors of the steppes who had mastered those. And an interesting sideline is the Tea Horse Trail that headed out of southern China in today's Yunming area. Other topics that popped up were contemporary echoes of places like Khorasan. Balkh was called a Khorasan city 4,000 years ago, 2000 BCE. And that has echoes in today's Afghanistan, where the Turkic version of ISIS takes the name ISIS-K, ISIS in Khorasan. So we look at historically what that territory was on the northern border of Persia. And always contemporary issue of the Chinese Belt and Road project. So all these topics present opportunities to look at contemporary events in their historical context. In our discussion today, we listed any number of topics we will like to be covering in the remaining 3 weeks. And one is the issue of trust that was necessary for trade to travel on the Silk Road. That is, credit had to be extended. People couldn't be carrying just a lot of gold that could be taken from them by bandits. And the first group of tradesmen that trusted each other were from Sogdia, the Sogdian merchants. And they trusted each other and were placed at strategic places along the Silk Road to lubricate and facilitate the trade. Later, we will see when we get to future chapters, is the Sufis provided that kind of trust among themselves, and then at some point the Jews fulfilled that role as well. Already the Fergana Valley has popped up when we were doing the Pashtuns. That is where Babur was born, who was a unique product of a marriage between a Tajik warlord and Mongolian woman. There's a lot of interest in Persia, and before the border between the first three chapters, which gets up to around 500 to 600, they have been overlooked as a classical society. The three classical societies have by some been listed as China, India, and the Mediterranean. But a strong case is being made that Persia should be included, and I think the book does do that. Hegel called them the first historical people. Cyrus the Great was really the first true global superpower leader. And Cyrus the Great was the headed an empire that spanned 3 continents, if you include the Balkans. And it was a civilization that connected over 40% of the known global population at that time. There's also continuing interest in Alexander, and we want to explore his biography a little bit more. And the debates among the early Christians is something we'll want to be pursuing in the next 3 hourly sessions before we get Ramsay Thomas' second monthly, which will cover chapters 4 through 6. So without further ado, I'll get you to today's discussion. So we're just going to kind of take some of Ramsay's points and enlarge on them. This is the first week after his presentation, so I'll start us off. But we've been talking about how next week people can formulate their own questions that they want to follow up on, and maybe even do their own research. And you can send me images, and I could make slides. So we'll see how this goes. I love this map that Ramsay showed, and I was fascinated with Taxila, the city right here. And this is in the Indus River Valley, that fertile Indus River Valley that was the destination for Alexander. So this was a major city that's now in Pakistan, as you'll see. And I was fascinated with the 2 roads that came out of Taxila. So one goes up to Balkh. What's Balkh? Balkh is right near Mazar Sharif in Afghanistan, what we've been studying. And the important thing is that now it's in the area of Turkish influence, the Tajiks and the Uzbeks, but back then it wasn't. It hadn't. The Turks hadn't come down from the steppes at this point. So Balkh, and I'm going to say more about Balkh in just a second. So for me, it's looking at a map like this and taking off from what I know and seeing where my curiosity takes me. And let's see if you think you're curious about it too. And here's Kashgar. All right, so this is the more familiar Silk Road, and that's what we're studying. That's why Ramsay took it. But I'm interested as much in the north-south movement of the Silk Road, which would include Afghanistan, as I am in the east-west. So I think that's going to be something that we can look into as we go forward. Also on this map is Urumqi. And let's see if I can.
Up top, way up at the top. Right here, up at the top.
Yeah. Urumqi, way up here. And also the Fergana Valley. So we've run into the Fergana Valley a lot. And that's going to be something I'd like to pursue in the coming weeks. The Fergana Valley. We know that the Turks took that over, and the Mongols and Babur had a Turkish father, a Tajik father, and a Mongol mother. And we know Babur came down and started the Mughal. So I'm really interested in doing a little bit deeper dive in the Fergana Valley. And it was in one of Ramsay's slides, if you remember his presentation. What else here? Okay.
Isn't Masood from the Fergana Valley?
What?
Isn't Masood from the Fergana Valley?
No, that's the Pamir.
Oh, the Pamir?
Yeah. So I'm just for the purpose.
Are the horses from the Fergana Valley?
Yes, those red horses that Ramsay mentioned. Mm-hmm. Okay, I can't see your faces because it was obscuring the map. So speak loudly. So on we go. And so here is where the city of Taxila was. Right now it's near Esfahan. And Balkh, turns out, is very near Mazar Sharif in these days. And this is how you'd get between the two, through Kabul, through the Khyber Pass. So I thought that was interesting just to bring Taxila into the modern map. Balkh, this is really interesting. One of the oldest cities, the Indo-European tribes who came down from the steppes. The last Indo-European tribe to come down are the Kushans. We'll get to the Kushans in just a second. So going back to 2000 BC. So we're talking about Egypt and Sumerian times almost. Not quite, that's 3,500, but still ancient. And here's our guy, Alexander. He came and he made that the capital of Bactria. So when we were doing the Pashtuns in Afghanistan, we kept hearing about Bactria, and we discussed it. It was later the capital of the Parthian Empire. How about that? It had various conquerors, Turks who are there now, and Uzbeks, in the form of Uzbeks and Tajiks, the Kushans, and then finally, of course, the Arabs, which we'll get to, and then Genghis Khan, which is on our list of things to talk about in the coming weeks. But I don't know how much we want to get ahead of Ramsay. I'm sure he's going to have a lot to say when we get to the 1200s. Balkh was rebuilt by Tamerlane or Timur. So he was the start of the current
Turk influence in northern Afghanistan. It formally joined the country of Afghanistan, which has been very weak, in 1850. So this was the time that the Pashtuns formally tried to govern with the Tajiks. There have been informal alliances between Pashtuns in their clan warfares with Tajiks, but this is the formal one. Balkh today is a flourishing cotton town and also hosts a festival we'll get to in just a second. And it had several names as a Khorasani city. Okay, I put Khorasani in red because we've seen that when we were studying the Tajiks. Also called 1,000 cities by the Greeks, the mother of cities by various people. And it's a UNESCO World Heritage Site because of its walls, which were built to defend against all these people going back and forth. It's been an important space for the development of Buddhism and even Judaism. And then later Islam, but most interestingly, Zoroastrianism. Ramsay talked about this this week. And I find this fascinating because I found one source that said Zoroastrianism actually originated in Afghanistan. Question? Why don't you just come in here? Which actually originated in Afghanistan between 1800 and 800. And it is Balkhians claimed that he lived and died there. Only about 2,000 Afghanis today identify as Zoroastrians. And you'll remember when ISIS took over Syria, they persecuted the Yazidis and made them and turned them into slaves. The women killed the men. So that's the hostility between Islam and Zoroastrianism. And we see that in Iran today. There's a big Zoroastrian holiday that is centered in Balkh. There are 2 weeks of fairs, sort of like a county fair. Okay, I think we're having some technical problems. Can you hear me now?
I can hear you, but I did miss this Zoroastrian. So
we'll come back then. Can
I just ask you a real question? Are the Yazidis Zoroastrian? I thought they were Christian.
No, they're Zoroastrians. Yeah, we'll come back and review that if the audio went out. And then Khorasan. Balkh was a Khorasan city. And we've seen Khorasan, that's the K in ISK. And who are the ISK? They're a branch of ISIS who are currently battling the Pashtuns. So these, I think, are Turkic background members of ISIS who see the Taliban as a threat. And we've studied that. And at the beginning, when the Taliban took over Afghanistan, they found themselves, they're the extremists, and they find themselves fighting the ultra extremists. And they use the word Khorasan as I'm thinking as a Turkic ethnic identity. And so it's basically the radical Islamic jihadists with a Turkic background fighting the Pashtuns. And this is their leader. He was in prison. And when the ISIS came in, I'm sorry, when the Taliban came in, they took him out of his jail cell and executed him. Why? Because he's a Wahhabist and the Taliban is more Deobandi. So not all jihadists are the same. And we know that the tension between Turks and Pashtuns is mirrored in the different schools of religion. And we learned that the Hanafi, which is the Deobandi, and the Hanabi, which is the Wahhabis, are from totally different branches of Islam. So these guys are Wahhabist, not Deobandi. And so what they envision is a Khorasan sub-caliphate. They would like to see their jihadist movement take over all of northern Afghanistan, which is where the Turkic population is highest. And they just write off southern Afghanistan, where the Pashtuns are in power. So that's kind of why it's important to know the history, to understand at least the thinking. And so they want to exclude the Pashtuns. So there is currently Tajik nationalism and great nostalgia, and many garden variety Tajiks, not Islamists, regard Khorasan as a part of their national history and their national identity. And so here it is that with the story of Khorasan starts with Balkh and ends in modern day jihadists fighting each other. That's why I love history. And you see on these ancient maps, Ramsay put this up, here's Khwarezmia, fascinating. And here is in the 7th and 8th century, Khorasan was a thing.
Johnny, I don't see the map. All I see is Abu Omar Khorazani.
Okay.
Okay, so we had this technical difficulty, and now it was corrected, and here is the second part.
All right, so fascinating. There's Khorasani, and down we go, and then the 7th and 8th centuries, we've got the Khorasan, and this is a big part of the Persian development in this time. And notice two names. Here's the Fergana Valley again, and now you get it in much more detail. I love this map. And so we'll come back and we'll do the Fergana Valley later. And just note this, Sogdia. These are, I think, going to be the Sogdian merchants that Ramsay talked about. And I'd like to do a deeper dive into the Sogdian. And here's Samarkand, so this is a good marking place. And here's Balkh. Balkh is still a thing. And you can see it's part of this Transoxiana Valley. And Transoxiana is the space between the the two rivers, the Oxus River and the Jaxartes River. And this is going to, I'm sure Ramsay's going to be talking about this big time in the future. And this Marwa is a part of current day Turkmenistan, where Ramsay wanted to go as well. And here we have been spending the last 18 weeks talking about Afghanistan, Kabul, Bamiyan. So that's our link to what was going on way up north in earlier times. And then we keep hearing about the Hindu Kush, and this is the mountain range. I think this map shows it very well. And Kashgar, somehow the link to the Silk Road went from Taxila up to Kashgar. Taxila is near today's Islamabad, and I'll talk more about that in a second. But we had questions about Bactria. Where was that? That was at the very low part of this Transoxia Valley, and you can see these two rivers empty into the Aral Sea, the Bactria has now been divided up totally between Afghanistan, Uzbekistan, Tajikistan, and there was a Bactrian language, but it's been knocked out by the Persian variety of Indo-European. And remember, the Turks are not Indo-European, right? So you had this tension between Pashtuns and Persians who are Indo-European. And I think that's important because the languages are so different that there's a strangeness to the other that they encounter, and allows them to treat them less than they would treat people that spoke their same language. Bactria on old maps, Gandhara, we're familiar with that from the Buddha, and Alexander made it there. So, I think we'll just skip through this, but part of Bactria was Samarkand, now in Uzbekistan, and Kunduz, which is in northern Afghanistan. So here we are back at this map, and I want to now look at the north-south trading routes. And this jumps ahead a little bit and shows where the Kushan Empire was. But here's Taxila, still a thriving trade city, and here's Kashgar. And I want to focus on this link. We've already done the other branch out to the northwest of Bactria and Balkh. I just want to throw this in that Kabul has been a crossroads for 3,500 years. So you're coming up from the Indus Plain through the Khyber Pass. So Kabul is strategically located as a stopping point on the north-south Silk Road, if we can call it that. Khyber Pass, well fortified. You can ambush and stop all traffic here just by throwing rocks down on them if you wanted to. Today, it's a mess. And that's how we got supplies to Afghanistan from ships in the Indian Ocean. And I want to look at a little bit more and make the connection to modern day, the trade route from Taxila up to Kashgar. It's alive and well, and China is using it as an economic corridor in partnership with Pakistan. What's in it for China? An outlet to the sea. And obviously, Pakistan needs all the help it can get, the economic help it can get, and it's getting it. And you'll remember when we were talking about Kashmir, we saw just to the west of Kashmir, the passage of roads, and I think they hope to build a train. The train would go, and here's Taxila, it's still on the map, just to the west of Islamabad and Rawalpindi. So it's still a thing. And the train would be built down all and go up here and connect to the Chinese rail on the road to Kashgar. And here's Abbottabad. What do we know about Abbottabad? That's where Osama bin Laden was hiding out, right? And here's Peshawar. We talked about that as being when the Afghans were at the peak of their powers, that was their summer residence in Peshawar. So again, this economic corridor, very important and part of China's big plan for the Belt and Road Initiative. The Belt paradoxically refers to the land-based stuff and the road refers to the sea, go figure. I just want to put that in the larger context of Chinese ambition. Now we just go on to Persia because that's a civilization that was overlooked when we did our first run through world history. It was not included as a classic a culture, civilization. It was just China, India, and the Mediterranean. But since then, I think there's been rethinking, and Ramsay has, I think, reclassified it. So just review, get you oriented on the map. Here's Sogdiana, which we want to spend some time talking about. And here's Bactria and Gandhara, India. So Persia controlled all this territory with Cyrus the Great, centered in Persepolis, which Aiko and I visited for a grand celebration. Must have been 2,500 years, something like that. This map shows their extent. Again, Bactria. And they obviously controlled Egypt. There were Persian dynasties, as we remember. And the royal road took them all the way to the Greek civilization. We remember the great naval battle at Salamis, which turned Persians back from Europe, right? The border between Europe and Asia is right here. And that was a milestone in history. So the Persians had a royal road to supply their troops. And Cyrus the Great, when he reached the peak of his powers, he was the one that I think was celebrated at Persepolis. The Shah threw a big party and spent a lot of money and made people mad because they didn't have basic services. And here comes our guy, Alexander. So nice try, Persia. You couldn't get anywhere. We took care of you at Salamis, and now we're going to turn the tables on you, and we're coming for you. And Alexander did. This is Darius, the third, 200 years after Darius the Great, who was Cyrus's son, I believe. And he was not slain by Alexander. He was slain by his own troops who realized that he had led them in and he was going to lose. And Alexander came and paid homage to him and said that the body was not to be desecrated. And he gave him an honorable funeral, which I think reflects the philosophy of the Greeks. They had learned the first attempt at a Greek empire at the time of classical Greece, when we are familiar with all the great thinkers, failed because they were brutal colonists. But Alexander learned that lesson and developed diplomatic techniques. He did, just to make a link to the Pashtuns, who we've been studying. Here's the connection. He says they're like lions. They fight every foot of the way, confronting my soldiers. Everyone in this land can be called Alexander. That's in the Pashtun mythology. I haven't double checked it, but whether things are true is one thing. What they believe is true is another. We didn't talk about this much, but when we were doing the religion and the clash of religions, and Alexander was interested in learning about the Eastern religions. After he died, he became a kind of a god that was combined with Osiris and celebrated in Egypt, Serapis. And you can find pictures of Serapis, who was Greek and Egyptian. And this is a Cushion man worshiping Serapis. We'll get to the Cushions here. So after Alexander, what it kind of opened up the Silk Road, and why? Well, the horses, that's what the nomads of the steppe could contribute. And as Ramsay said last week, the Chinese were very interested in horses, so they could fight the Altaic people, the Mongols and the Turks that kept invading them and who knew how to ride horses. So that's what the steppes had to offer. Here's Taxila again, and Bactra that we've already talked about. And the different items of trade, frankincense and myrrh, we know from the Bible. Oil, gold was on the Arabian Peninsula, and grain. Ramsay mentioned the Roman search for grain, and he looked to the east, but I'll just point out that Carthage was also a source of grain, and that was one of the causes of the Punic Wars that Rome had to fight against the likes of Hannibal. So interesting map. And then you go on to the Parthian Empire. After Alexander, there were two Greek empires, for a while, Greco-Bactrian, and then Indo-Greek kingdoms, 100, 200 years. And Buddhism makes its move at one point. We're about ready to get to. And so this is the Parthian Empire, reaches peak at this period. And the Uezi, who are they? They're the last Indo-Europeans. They become the Kushans. And they're pushed out north of, on the northern border of China by the likes of the Huns. But they're Indo-Europeans. They're not Altaic. And so they have something in common with the Persians and the Afghanis who speak Indo-European. And here is their empire. Here's our touchstone of Taxila. Again, here you see Kashmir a little bit more clearly as being very near the route up to Kashgar. And the Kushan Empire goes all the way down into the Ganges River Valley. So they get two river valleys, the Indus River Valley and all the way over towards Patna. I'm not sure quite where Patna it would be on this map. But when we did the Sikhs, we talked about the Punjab, right? And this is what's going to be known as the Punjab, where the Sikhs will come later on. And they're very much part of this north-south trafficking. Another map of the Kushan Empire. I like it just because it shows the Himalayas and that impenetrable barrier. If you want to get to China, you got to go over here and down. But I'm going to show you another option in just a second. The Kushan greatest leader, Kanishka, he's the one that adopted Buddhism and turned his people from paganism and became a great patron of Buddhism. They had big international conferences even back then, and he sponsored, I think, the fourth big Buddhist parley, where they tried to get all the different branches that had evolved geographically back on the same page. And I like this map of the ancient Silk Road. It kind of clarifies, simplifies, and we see Tajikistan, Uzbekistan, Turkmenistan. We can all, we're beginning to build up a knowledge of that. And on through Iraq, Syria, branches, Lebanon, Beirut obviously becomes a big trading area, and on through present day Turkey. It was Asia Minor, but controlled by descendants of Alexander for a long time. So let's talk a little bit about China now. China is always interested in heading east. We've already heard from Ramsay that they wanted horses, and the best horses were from Persia. So they're kind of breaking out, heading east behind the Great Wall, which is kind of a misnomer, but a continuation of fortifications to try to keep the Altaic peoples from overrunning them, and the Mongols and the Turks. but they push west and on towards to meet up with the areas that we've been talking about beyond the Himalayas. And then I want to show an exception that we ran into when we traveled with Ramsay and Janet to China. Kunming was a central place for us after coming up from Laos. We were in our tour bus, a converted military truck, basically. We were in Dali, and Dali was a place, a central place for trade. You could go south from Dali towards India. These are hard trails. You could go due west into Burma, really tricky. But once you got to Dali, you could head north, and that would get you a way to get to the northern Silk Road. Lhasa, a high elevation, was a place you'd have to endure, but there were horse trade here. And what did the Chinese have to offer? Tea. So this was called the Tea Horse Trail. And it's not much of a trail, as you can see. And some places, hardly a trail at all. But so much did they want horses that they would go through the fog on rocky terrain to trade. And this is the war horses that they wanted. Ramsay introduced us to the Sasanian empire, and this is a Sasanian knight. They were so successful because they had these big war horses. Just a flash forward, this area has been a key transportation area in fighting of World War II, the Burma Road. So the Burma Road heads in and probably duplicates some parts of the tea horse trail, horse tea trail. And just to show you that quickly, trains in Burma, but then they had to go by foot at first, and then eventually a road was built that got all the way to Kunming to supply China against Japan. And there you go. That is to get a vehicle across the Burma Trail. That's what you had to do. And it was very important to keeping the Chinese supplied during World War II. So on to Buddhism. What time is it? The spread of Buddhism. This is where the Buddha lived. And Buddhism spread all over the place as a reform movement for Hinduism. We talked a little bit about that on Wednesday, and I hope that came through in the video, Shigeko. But we're going to have higher quality video and sound next month. And so here is Taxila. And up to Kashgar, right? So we're prepared for that. And here's Bhaktra. And Buddhism obviously goes to Korea and Japan, also by sea. And let's look at some of the early missionaries. So they headed out, and they go by the Cushion Road. The Cushions made the Silk Road safe for hikers that wanted to get from India to China. So Buddhist missionaries. And this was before the Tang Dynasty. By the Tang Dynasty, the flow went the other way, actually a little bit before, but the most famous Chinese monk who walked to the west is, it depends how you want to say it, Zhuan Tsang. And he lived in near Xi'an, and he decided he'd go see for himself. And this was the route he took. It looks like he did not go through Kashgar. He went all the way around to Tashkent and then down. So there he walks there, and he spends, I don't know, 15 years as I can remember. Here's another look at it, how he came. So you see Peshawar was on his stop. I'm not sure where this is. We'd have to, but here's our touchstone, Taxila. And he came down and got all the way to where Buddha was born. And at least in this version, he takes a ship home. So it's just a one-way trip. And this is the guy, we saw him when we visited Xi'an. He's celebrated, and he's out standing in front of the Goose Temple, right? Iko Goose Temple. And tourists come to pay honor and homage to him all the time. So in summary, you have the Kushan Empire, which made the Silk Road safe between China, at least for a while. And then you have the Chinese stretching out to the west. We're at the year 600, and that's just the beginning of the Tang. We'll talk more about the Tang, I'm sure, next month. But the Han had, this is a better map, I think, than the one before. They had pushed all the way over to Marv. You remember that's in current day Turkestan, to the southeast of the Caspian Sea. And this, remember, is the Transoxiana, between the two rivers that go north and empty into the Aral Sea. We looked at that earlier. And Iko and I have been with Jeremy to Dunhuang, and we've seen all the Buddhist caves as they walked along on their way to and from Kashgar. And all this way was Chinese security and police. And then the Kushans would take over at some point to provide security. All right. And the Tang extended all the way to the Pamir Mountains. And we saw, when we looked at the Pamir Valley, the river that runs and connects to China. And so no doubt they used that and got all the way to the Pamir Valley, which is that little northeast limb of Afghanistan. Maps just tie all this together and make things so much more understandable. And the Silk Road trade was reinvigorated by the Tang security and Buddhism. was welcome, as was Nestorian Christianity. So we talked a little bit about that last time. And what wasn't mentioned was Genghis Khan's mother was Nestorian. Yes. Okay. The Muslim quarter in Xi'an, where we visited, it was on my birthday. And Janet's birthday, the day before mine. So we had a big celebratory meal there. And we did visit the Muslim quarter and the mosque there. And it was the biggest city in the world at the time of the Tang. And the Sogdian merchants came all the way there from that valley in Transoxiana. So I want to actually spend some time just tracing the Sogdians by themselves rather than sprinkling them into this narrative. All right, so this is just a different map. The question is, will the Belt and Road Initiative gain as much influence as into the West? Here are the Khazars that we bumped into when we were learning about the evolution of the Kievan dynasty. They were Jewish. And so I'm sure Ramsay will spend some time talking about that. And how are we doing on time? So this probably is going to be a good place to stop, because now we're getting into the Silk Road, the horses, the Kushan Empire, the Parthians, and now Rome has controlled the Mediterranean. And they mentioned the different things that were traded for. What did the Black Sea contribute? Slaves and grain. So the grain from where? From the Ukraine and the Volga river valleys. Horses from the north, silk from China, fabric and gems and spices, pearls from India, interesting perfume from Thailand, and then grain here on the northern rim where Carthage was, and Carthage was, after the Punic Wars was destroyed, and the Romans took salt and sprinkled it in their fields so that they would never have to fight them again. Seemed a little self-defeating that maybe they should grow grain. But olive oil, copper, gold, wine, pottery, and what did the Celts contribute? Tin to make brass. So that was their contribution. All right. So now we have a clear separation of East and West, and we'll take it from there next time. I'm gonna end here and see if you guys have any questions.
I have a question. Isn't there a better way to transport goods rather than rebuilding the Silk Road now? I mean, I could see where it was important in that era, but I mean, there's better transportation, isn't there, than just building road?
Yeah, trains. You can get on a train in China and take it all the way to London. So trains are a big thing now.
Oh, so the Silk Road is not going to be just a road; it's going to be other things.
No, that's the belt. It's really a train belt, not a road.
Oh.
Yeah. So and then
and then the road is labeled the ship traffic. So go figure.
Uh,
How are we doing on time?
It's almost one. What I'd like to learn more about is the Sogdians, the let's see, I forget now who the other group was. And also, like, you know, in Afghanistan, that northern part where Masood came from, they're all influenced on Bactria. They're all was part of the Persian Empire. And I'd like to know that just how much influence the Persian Empire had in those areas and when it waned. And because, you know, it's surprising that like the people in that far northwestern part of Afghanistan are still speaking Persian, Farsi.
Yeah, Indo-European. So maybe you know, I did all the talking today because I just had written down comments and but
that was wonderful. Yeah.
maybe next time you guys, Aiko, you could do.
I don't have time.
Well, okay. If you tell me which direction to go, I love this stuff, and
Oh, you're good at it.
Yeah. I don't have the time. I've got
okay.
so much to do.
Okay, I'm gonna before we get into your daily schedule, I'll stop recording. anything you're interested in, Shigeko?
Well,
So I'll end it here. And when we return next week, we'll start in Roman times and then move on to the age of religion, Christianity we'll start with. And then in the month of March, Ramsay will be giving a talk about the next three chapters of the book that'll start with Islam. So I'll sign off, and I hope that this introductory discussion, which was a little rough because we had technical problems, and I hope you understand the different parts of this project, the book, Ramsay's monthly discussions, our weekly discussions. I hope that that makes some sense, and I hope we'll have a larger conversation over the first three chapters in the next 3 weeks. All right, thank you.